and welcome to the Writers Corner live show. Today on the show, we're talking to an award-winning author, licensed psychotherapist, and host of the top iTunes podcast, Be You, Find Happy. Don't go away, we'll be right back. If you're just joining us, welcome to the Writers Corner live show. I'm your host, Bridget Lambanda, all the way from Cape Town in South Africa. And my amazing co-host is Mary Elizabeth Jackson. She's an award-winning author of the children's Foolicious book series. She's also a special needs and disabilities advocate. She lives in Nashville in the USA. And as I said, I'm in Cape Town in South Africa. Mary, welcome to the show.
Hi, good morning, good evening, depending on where people are. And super excited about the show today. And I know it's a little chilly where you are. It's getting hot here where we are. And we're just a little bit like polar opposites sometimes, right?
Absolutely. Yes, I'm also very excited about our guest today. We're talking to the amazing Michaela Renee Johnson. She's an award-winning author. She's a licensed psychotherapist, and she's also the host of the top iTunes podcast, Be You, Find Happy. The Be You Find Happy holds workshops and conversations on finding happiness in spite of life's setbacks. And this has landed her speaking opportunities across the nation. Now, life setbacks are aplenty at the moment with COVID-19. So I think let's welcome Michaela to the show, shall we?
Yes.
Michaela, a huge big welcome to the show. So pleased to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. Good morning. I'm really pumped to go write a book or something after that music you guys had. I was like, jamming out. It's great.
I know. It's really awesome, isn't it? And the introduction is beautiful. And we just didn't have a band on the red carpet. So hope this is good.
Well, I am surrounded by 9 chickens right now. So at any time, one of them may jump up behind me. But that's part of life, right? So
yeah. That's like one of your kids, right? Just a kid can do that. Mine may come in and want to see your chicken. So, you never know. But we're so excited to have you here. And thank you for being outside too, because, we're indoors. And it's so nice to see outside, and outside is so important for all of us with fresh air, and it just helps us connect and be more grounded. And it's really good for all kids and chickens, obviously, right? So
yeah, they don't like it too much inside the house.
No. And I know somebody who had some in their house once, and I was like, oh my gosh. No. So I want to ask you how long you've been writing. Because I know a lot of people, I know like for myself, I wrote poetry forever before I ever actually got into writing and then got into being published. So, was it like that for you, or was that you went to college, you got your journalism degree and you're like communication, you're like, this is what I'm doing. And then you went hardcore with it?
So I started writing at age 3, and my first yeah.
That's awesome.
And then by 3rd grade, I was really writing. Like I was actually, writing in my journal and things like that. And then by age 14, I had my first major published work, which was in the Sacramento Bee. So literally my whole life.
So that was like last week, right? Because you're now 15, right?
Yeah.
That is so amazing. So, where did your love for writing come from? Was it your parents, or was it something you were born with?
Or an escape? Wasn't it an escape for you? Some kids, it's a coping mechanism too for some people, right?
So I think when I first started, I mean, to answer your question, I feel like I was born in this way because often it's how I think about the world. And I'll do a lot of captions on my Instagram story and things like that. And people will say, oh my gosh, your words, it makes a movie in my head, So I think that in some ways I was born with it. However, my mom just sent me a review for my new book today. And it was such a beautiful review that I was like, oh, maybe that's where I get my writing skills. But it didn't become really a therapeutic tool until I was, sometime during college that I started. I mean, that's not true. I was journaling in the third grade. So, but my memoir, Teetering on Disaster, was certainly a therapeutic event that unfolded and became a book. It started as a blog, actually, before blog was even a word. And it started gaining followership, and not in the way blogs do now, in a different way, and ended up becoming a book that I think, at least from the reviews and the people that I've talked to, has really inspired a lot of women. So I guess it's a combination of all of those things to answer your question.
Awesome. How many books do you have published at this point?
I have to count now. So I have a memoir, a fiction novel, a self-help book, Empowered, a motivational journal for women, and 4 children's books. However many that adds up to be.
That's wonderful. Are all of them self-published, or some are with traditional, some are self, or?
Yeah. So they're a mix, but certainly the newer books are traditionally published.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do you make the decision to go traditional or to self-publish? Like, is there a formula that you decide, to make that decision, or is it kind of how you feel, or how's that thought process?
It's in the beginning, my very first one, Teetering on Disaster, was hybrid publishing. So that was kind of my introduction. And so a lot of what I had to do was self-required. And so I learned a lot about the publishing industry. So then my next 2 books were self-published because I had learned a lot through the first process. The traditional publishing experience is totally different. It pushes me outside of my comfort zone. Typically, when I write a book, it's more writing for me, and because I thought it would help someone else, but I don't go up there and pitch it a lot. I don't promote the heck out of it. Where the traditional publishing world, there's more of an expectation for promotion. And so I've learned a lot about that during the course of traditional publishing. So there's benefits to each. Right now I'm working on a fiction. That's not true. I'm working on 2 books. One is in the self-help genre, and then one of them is a fiction book. And the fiction book I absolutely will not self-publish. So that one I will query and query and query until the point in which it gets
going to drop dead, right?
Agent. Yeah.
Michaela, I'm intrigued. How do you what is the word?
Compartmentalize.
I'm getting all befuddled with my words here, but you know what I mean. How do you write 2 books that are so very, very different at the same time? Just how do you do that?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've had a lot of people ask me about being a multi-genre author, because that's not typical.
But it is doable. It is doable.
Yeah, definitely is doable. Yeah. Especially when I think, if you have my kind of mind, which is I'm an avid storyteller. Like, everything is a story to me. So, being a psychotherapist, a lot of what I do is help others. Well, how do I best help others? Analogies. I can give them analogies. I can, explain to them how tools will work and things like that. And that's not unlike telling a story that you would traditionally in a fiction book. So, but when I'm writing my fiction book, emotionally, I'm very different. And my husband will say that, like, I go to a very different space and I'm like in this character's mind as I'm typing and working. And that's very different than when I'm writing just a blog or, a piece for a self-help book or a chapter in a self-help book. Very different. The children's books all were developed through bedtime stories with my son. So that was totally kind of different.
I totally understand that. What is your children's books?
What is the what?
The age for your children's books.
It's really like kindergarten to the second grade at the oldest. The picture books will last longer than that. Like my son will still enjoy a picture book if I read it to him, but for them to get the most out of it, I really think birth up to second grade, and they would probably be able to read it on their own with some help starting in kindergarten.
Okay, that is awesome. And I can relate to you with being able to write the different genres because it's something that I'm doing presently, but it's metaphors nature creates so many metaphors for me. If I'm needing something to think about or write about, and then there's those moments of burst through and, I guess I see life sort of like what you're talking about as well. And everything in nature is a metaphor for life. I see it like that way. And so then that leads to stories, even just the way a flower blooms can be a lesson for us in our life, surviving and it's standing there alone by itself and never giving up and pursuing and so I think it's amazing what you're doing, and I want to go check your children's books out because I am a fan of children's books. But how far were you into this career and before you started your podcast?
So realistically, if we're going to count when Teetering first published, which was 2009, the podcast started in 2019, so 10 years. But, I became a licensed psychotherapist in 2011. So 8 years from then. And it was a friend's idea. She said, this message is bigger than what you're doing and podcasts are the new thing. And, I was like, I don't know, and we started doing it together, just kind of her talking to me, and that kind of warmed up the podcast. And then what happened is the podcast took off and became a top iTunes podcast in self-care. And I never, ever would have expected that to have happened. The celebrity guests we've had on the show have been international, and I've learned more from them than I ever could have imagined I would doing podcasting. So it's been great. And I have moments where I think, that's time I could be spending towards writing and that sort of thing. But it is such a great, experience and people love it. So.
And you're providing.
That is amazing.
That is amazing. Yeah.
So would you say, having the podcast, how's that helped you as an author and as a psychotherapist?
Not so much as a psychotherapist because my clients are local, but from a life coaching standpoint, it's definitely broadened my reach as far as, getting clients and things like that. As an author, it's helped me tremendously in the way of connection. People that I've had, most of the people that I've had on the podcast have written a book or are wildly successful. They're TED Talk speakers, things like that. And so it's been a great resource to be able to circle back when I was publishing Empowered and say, hey, would you be interested in, doing a review or an endorsement or something like that? So it's been really, really helpful.
That is
and
awesome.
when is your, when you're writing, you've got a family, so when is your best time to write? Is it morning, evening, weekends, or simply when the inspiration comes? How do you compartmentalize your time for writing?
I have found over the years that forcing myself to sit down at a certain time and write does not work for me. Like to say, I'm going to write every day at this time. It doesn't work for me because I am so inspired by people and things around me, experiences that I have, that usually what will happen is in the moment, something triggers me and I say, I'm going to sit down and write. But I write literally all day. There's always something that I'm writing, whether it's something for my e-journal, which is something I put out twice a month, or my blog, or one of the books that I'm working on, or just simply a caption for Instagram, or whether it's show notes for my podcast. I'm also a guided meditation teacher on Insight Timer. So I do guided talks there as well. So I'm always writing something. There's never a day where I haven't written something.
That is amazing. So in terms of deciding, do you write with your audience in mind, or do you write and then decide who it's for?
I guess it would be the latter. I think I just write. And then I guess it depends on what I'm writing. If it's a guided meditation, it's usually an experience that I've had and I'm writing for myself, and knowing that it could help other people, and not being too specific to me, but keeping it kind of broad. If I'm writing something for an Instagram story or a post, that's a little different. It's usually my personal life, If I'm writing something that's going into a chapter in a fiction novel, then that's all for the masses. Like, I'm 100% using language that, pop culture would understand in a way that they would want to read it. So I guess it kind of depends.
And when you write fiction, do you sort of weave in people that and then do you tell them, or is it completely fictional, made up characters?
This new one is completely fictional, made up characters, which has been really fun. It's been a lot of fun. In the past, like, I have a book called Me and Mo. It's a fiction book. It's a funny fiction book, but it's loosely based on people that were, in my life. Like, I worked at a radio station. The main character is the host of a radio show. So, like, I had that experience of working at a radio station with the DJs and kind of knowing what their backstory is like and what it's like to be behind the scenes at a radio station. So, it's loosely based on that. There's not a specific person that I would say, oh, this is a one for one, but it's definitely loosely based on people, whereby this new fiction novel is completely nobody. So
does it come from, oh, sorry, go ahead, Brigetti.
That's fine. I wanted to ask you to tell us a bit about Be You Find Happy. How did that come about? And who is the audience that you serve with Be You Find Happy?
So it started as a hashtag on Instagram, hashtag #BeYou. And then I started adding Be You Find Happy, and people started tagging their pictures. And I was like, wow, there's something here. People want more happiness. And at the same time, simultaneously in my client sessions, working with my clients, I was like this record. I was repeating the same things, like, here's tools, here's what you need to do to clear your physical space, your emotional space. Like, I was going through the same handful of things with every client that walked through the door, regardless of what they wanted to work on. And so I realized that there was a real need to create like a quick happiness starter kit, like just a basic get you going. And so the podcast started right around the time that I published the Be You Find Happy starter kit. So they kind of went hand in hand. And then I would just say to my clients, I'm going to email you this PDF and you can read that and then we'll get started,
That is brilliant, though, because that's kind of like sending a resume to a date before you go on the date, so you sort of know each other. I always thought that would be so brilliant to just go, if you want to date somebody, give them your resume about yourself. You're not looking for a job, you're looking for someone, right? And then you get all that stuff out of the way, and then it's like, then if you really want to date that person or not. But nobody's done that yet. So, I just always thought that would be a good idea.
Funny story, that is what the book Me and Mo is about.
Oh, it is?
Oh, wow.
Yes. She wants to be like a serious news journalist, on a legit radio talk show. And she winds up being the resident dating expert on a pop 40 station. And she has to do this create a date where she has to they match her with people that have similar life interests, like as far as that goes, like a resume kind of thing. And she winds up in all these, but it's a much deeper story than that, because she lost her parents as a young child. She lives with her grandparents, so she's completely unable to be committed and attached to someone. And so she kind of goes through that finding herself experience of, loss and love and all that good stuff.
Oh my gosh, that sounds really interesting.
It's fun. It's a fun book. Yeah. She's really sarcastic too. So I had a good time writing it, because I have kind of a quick tongue sometimes. So it was fun to have all that, space to do 80,000 words of, sarcasm.
What has been
a lot of sarcasm?
What has been your most fun writing experience to date? I mean, if you have to look, you've written so many books. What has been the highlight of all your projects so far, and why would you say so?
I think Empowered has been the most fun, and I have it right here. I showed it earlier, but because it really took so many different prompts that I've used.
Michaela, hold that upright. I'm going to put you on full screen. People can see. There we go.
So it's really I don't know if you can see the proper light here, but it's really a beautiful story. And it's a journal for women, and it incorporates a lot of the prompts that I've used myself before I became a psychotherapist, just in healing and kind of working through old stuff. And then it also incorporates a lot of the tools that I've used in art workshops, art and therapy workshops for my clients. So it's really an awesome place for women to go and explore who they are. And there's so much fun stuff to do in it. And so like you pick a constellation and draw your constellation. And then, I won't get into all the details, but there's a lot of really fun out of the box creative prompts. And I had just a really good time thinking, what would women love to do? And one of them, you turn on the radio and you dance, and then you journal about that experience. So it was fun coming up with the prompts and that sort of thing. I really enjoyed writing it. One of my children's books, though, Vegetable Souffle, we had a great time writing, because that one my son collaborated with me on, as well as his grandma. And so it was just a lot of fun to kind of create the story.
How old is he?
He turns 9 next Friday. So.
Oh, happy birthday. Do you have just one child?
Just the one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they are so, their world and the wonderment and innocence of their world, I know for myself, it creates endless amounts of stories and creativity, and it's just beautiful. I'd like to I think it's fun to live in that world as opposed to the real world.
I'm constantly learning from him, and the way he sees things, and the way that, he interacts with other people and me. And I'm constantly humbled by the experience of being a mom, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a humbling experience.
It's amazing. I mean, my sons are adults now, and we've had some conversations that were so enlightening to me, because I look at the experiences they had through my eyes, and listening to them and recounting the experience through their eyes. It's like, did we even live through the same experience at the same time? Because it's like the perspective is so completely different.
It's amazing.
I remember I was telling my mom something about this house that we lived in when I was a young girl, and the long hallway, and she goes, Michaela, that was a duplex. It was like 800 square feet. The hallway was not very long, but it felt huge.
That's so funny. That's so funny. But everything is so big, to kids. So I want to ask you, for anyone watching right now in the replay and stuff, anyone who has kids, because like mine are very spread out, 19, 16, and then 7. So my college daughter and high school daughter have had a very difficult time with the time we're in right now. And so what advice would you give to any teenagers that happen to be watching, or any parents who have teenagers, and just kind of helping them to maneuver through this time and stay in a place of positivity, even though you have to acknowledge kind of how crappy all this is, because we can't, Disney's closed, so we can't pretend like we're at Disney World right now, right? So, I mean, how do you kind of keep them, up? Because I know what I'm doing in my house, but I'm just wondering what your thoughts are for advice for finding the happy right now.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple thoughts. The first one is you have to accept that it is what it is right now in many ways, and it's not going to be this way forever. So this is temporary. It may not look the same way, but when we kind of come back from everything, but this is temporary. Number one, if you're having an off day, allow yourself to feel your off day. Allow yourself to be upset for a certain period of time, and then say, okay, what can I actually do that's positive within this? And so if you're going to be upset for your 30 minutes, then be upset for 30 minutes. And then at 31 minutes, go do something. Go do something positive. Go for a walk. Read a book. Listen to a guided meditation on Insight Timer. Put on some music, whatever, but do something different that's positive, that gets your mind off of things. Also, verbalize what you need from others. So, this is really a loss that we're all experiencing in some way or another. We're all experiencing micro losses that are all in one big loss. And so when we think about it as a loss, we can realize that there are 5 stages of grieving to any loss. And so, and now they even say that there's 6. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, I think, came out with a 6th stage. So, imagine that somebody has just taken something very large away from you and how you would go through those emotions. You would be angry, you would be depressed, you would bargain, you would eventually get to acceptance, So in knowing that you can be bouncing through all of these phases, you can kind of lighten up on yourself a little bit and say, all right, I'm in the anger phase right now, or all right, I'm in the depressed phase right now. And it's okay to experience all of those emotions. It's perfectly normal. And then the other thing is, share what you're going through with others and say, look, I'm having a really tough day today. This is what I need. Or I'm having a great day today and I want to celebrate today. Let's do something fun. Or I'm having a great day and you're kind of in a bad space. And so I need to kind of not be there and set a boundary. So, there's the other thing, the final thing I'll say about all of this is that right now, a lot of people feel out of control. They feel like there is nothing within their control. But the truth is there is a lot that is within your control. One of the most important things that's within your control is what you're consuming. So if you're having a really tough time, maybe stop reading the news, maybe stop listening to podcasts that are negative, maybe, stop following people on social media that are downers. You have a choice on what you consume, and you have a choice in a lot of other things as well. So try to use this time to think about what you're putting in to your mind space and make good choices that way.
Very, very good advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
So tell us, where can people, how can people best reach out to you, Michaela, to connect and to find your books more than anything else?
Yeah, so I really recommend if you want more kind of happiness in your life and you're looking for tips and tricks, the best thing to do is to sign up for my e-journal. It's very simple. You go to beyoufindhappy.com and click Get Empowered Now.
That is awesome. Michaela, thank you so much. It was amazing to have you on the show.
Yeah,
and Rob Jones is watching, another one of our authors, and he totally agrees.
Yes, he loves your mind. He said Rob is a good friend of ours, and yes, he actually just got a new contract on a romance novel, so I'm very excited for him. But, yes, so celebrations are everywhere, even though we're in the midst of all this crazy, and some people are having a very, very hard time, and what we need to show them is kindness and compassion.
Absolutely. Michaela, thank you so much. It was awesome having you as a guest.
Thanks for having me. It was great to be here.
It's a big pleasure, big pleasure. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you back again next week. Stay well, be good, have fun, have a great weekend, everyone. So from us, it's goodbye for now.
Bye.